you are not, thank you, and try to connect on areas that you are not able to grasp well during the class. It was about the payback period, and particularly we were looking at how long it takes a project or a program to pay back the total amount of investments. And that we said was a yardstick that the human resource management as well as the top management could really figure out when they are choosing on what projects they are supposed to pursue, taking into account that they have limited resources and they have to therefore choose wisely and economically on what programs they are supposed to undertake. The major thing here is to try to minimize the total investments, the total cost. And so that program that you have to choose must be that which will cost you less and give you more. And so the ability of a program to pay faster, the ability of a program to pay faster could be in a way that we can use to measure or to choose that we are supposed to commit our funds to. So that was payback period. On your free time, kindly please try to look at it. Now today I want us to look at 3 of the revision materials: November 2019, June 2018, and December 2017. November 2019, June 2018, and December 2017. And we will be looking at turnover rate. We'll be looking at absenteeism rate. We'll be looking at cumulative value of HR, costs. Particularly want to look at the present values. And I believe we'll be able to have enough time so that we can move through this very quickly. And finally, we'll be looking at the interpretation of multiple regression models. Interpretation of multiple regression models. So I want us to look at the turnover rate. I want us to consider absenteeism rate, and well as the present value of numbers, of figures. And then finally, we'll be looking at the interpretation of multiple regression equations or models. And quickly, I've shared with you the past papers in the group, the Human Resource Accounting group in the WhatsApp. Unless there is one of us or some of us who are not on WhatsApp, maybe I can share with them through their emails, or if you happen to be having difficulties opening the material via WhatsApp, then I can quickly share it with you via email so that we move together. So maybe if I may know, but I believe all of us can access the materials through their WhatsApp. I've shared it in the WhatsApp. So we can open the November 2019. We can open the November 2019 paper. In the November 2019 paper, we'll be particularly trying to compute the turnover rate, absenteeism rate, median, mode, and mean. There is a question that is testing on that. There's a question that is testing on absenteeism rate, a question that is testing on turnover rate, a question that is testing on the mean, the median, and the modes. So once we are done with that, we will very quickly move on to the next, and then finally the last material. So I believe all of us are on the same page. All of us are on the same page. The 2019 November, let me try to open mine. Yes, I've got it, but I can as well share it with you for those who may not have it. Let me share it with you as well. Yeah, that is the paper. If you can see on my screen, that is the paper, the November 2019. It's about the Paula's dairies. It's about the Paula's dairies. So let's have one reading for the entire class. Let's have one reading for the entire class, or one volunteer, just reading once. I remember, I hope you already know the techniques that we will always employ on case studies, but for the purposes of this revision class, I would want us to go through it just once for the sake of time also. So if we have, or we happen to have anyone who has succeeded in opening, and I believe all of us, we have succeeded in opening the material so that we can all follow as one of us reads it out.
All
Yes.
right, I'll read.
Okay.
I'll read.
Go ahead.
All right, Paula's Dairies. Paula's Dairies is one of the largest companies in the dairy industry in the region, and it was registered in the early 70s as a public limited company. It owns over 5,000 dairy cattle and 5 milking yards, which has enabled it to produce thousands of liters of milk per day. Its dairy farm is pasture-based, and cows graze all the year round on perennial grass, but the pasture is occasionally supplemented by maize, silage, and soy. The company produces its own milk, but regularly supplements its supplies from local farmers. The end product consists of fresh and powdered milk, cheese, and butter, which are marketed in local and global markets. Paula's Dairies distinguishes itself as a dynamic organization based around the principles of creating stakeholder value through reliability in its products. It has continuously offered a portfolio of products tuned to customer needs, and has maintained focus on array of innovative initiatives to establish itself as a market leader. Over the past decades, the company has drawn its strength from, from commitment and support from the top management, robust customer feedback, availability of water and fertile soils. In 2014, the chief executive officer pointed out that the management was optimistic about the company's ability to sustain exponential growth in the financial year, despite the high competitive environment characterized by numerous players. Its directors envisioned to increase the rate of turnover from 30 billion shillings to 60 billion in 2020. In 2015, the company was rated amongst the most innovative in dairy farming in the country, and the ratings fueled the management's desire to conquer higher growth heights. In 2016, the company benchmarked against the major players in the industry, and after the benchmarking exercise, the management observed shortcomings in critical areas, which was likely to jeopardize operations. Lapses in fiscal controls and the absence of critical metrics and indicators were revealed. The company did not measure income per employee, and it failed to hedge against currency fluctuations, thus jeopardizing cash held in foreign currencies. The net working capital was 2.2 billion shillings, whereas majority of companies at the same level operated at less than half of this capital. Other indicators of inefficiencies included the absence of a clear approach to human resource evaluation and an inadequate system of reporting program results. On receiving the benchmarking report, the board of directors resolved to address the issues at the same time pursue the company's expansion agenda. As a result, the company adopted the inorganic structure to drive its growth and capture the desired market share. It acquired three competitor companies in East Africa, and the resultant synergy through economies of scale prompted further expansion beyond East Africa. The acquisition made Paula's Dairy an undisputed market leader in East and South Africa, regions based on the company's agility, capability, technology, and innovation. The management was also well informed that a robust human resource function was necessary to sustain growth, and it therefore put measures aimed at ensuring that the function was aligned to the strategic objectives of the company. To this end, the audit committee undertook a human resource audit aimed at identifying the company's strengths and skill gaps. The results of the audits were used to benchmark against legal requirements and global best practices. Subsequently, the Human Resource Department adopted the balanced scorecard approach to human resource evaluation. The decision to adopt the approach was based on the premise that the approach was more strategic and it focused on the various perspectives of performance. The company's growth and expansion agenda and the revamping of the internal systems and procedures was on course before an interruption by a combination of disruptive factors. An economic slowdown caused by a drought between 2017 and 2018 increased operational costs and reduced profitability. To mitigate the challenge, Paula's Dairies implemented stringent cost-cutting measures and borrowed heavily to sustain operations. Employees' allowances were drastically reduced or withdrawn altogether. In the late 2017, media reports revealed that the company had constantly failed to remit deductions to various relevant authorities, and the company owed more than 10 billion in tax arrears. Authorities reacted to non-remittance by obtaining freezing orders of the company accounts to enforce payment. As a result, Paula's Dairies market share fell below, share price fell below 10 shillings from a high of 64 shillings 2 years earlier. The company's reputation plummeted at the same rate as its stocks. The series of events resulted to numerous cases, grievances that accumulated to low morale. A report obtained from the Human Resource Department in 2017 indicated that there was a total of 1,000 employees and they collectively took 1,700 unscheduled leave days during the year. The absenteeism translated to turnover, and out of the average number of 800 employees, 120 of them, mostly from the middle management level, resigned from their positions and had to be replaced within the same year. The high rate of turnover alarmed the board of directors, since Paula's Dairies had one of the most competitive reward management systems in the industry. The board requested for remuneration data in an effort to identify the underlying problems. The salaries of 10 most recent separations are shown in table 1. Do I need to read those?
No.
Okay. The role and value of the Human Resource Department in the company has come under threat. An aura of fear has descended on employees in the various levels, and regularly conflicts between the Human Resource Director and divisional heads have been reported. The culture of employee engagement and collaboration has eroded as the gap between policy and practice became evident. The stakeholders are afraid that Paula's Dairies is headed for monumental shipwreck unless urgent interventions are put in place.
Yes. Thank you so much for that presentation. Now, that is the case study, and it's about Paula's Dairies. It's quite bulky, and I know quite a number of concepts might have passed us, but the bit of computation is very clear, and we will be able to connect with it very fast. So we have been told from this case study about a dairy company, which is the largest, of course, in the industry, in the dairy industry, in the region. And we have been told about everything about it, how it owns 5,000 dairy cattle and everything that it planned to undertake. But again, it was faced with some challenges, which we clearly noted in paragraph 2, paragraph 3, paragraph 4, and the plans, of course, that the managements aspire to put in place in order to beef up the growth. But in spite of all this, we see the challenges that still face the company. And the conclusion, the remark, is that if the management fails to put some intervention measures, then we are told that the Pora Dairies is headed for a monumental shipwreck. So this is the case study. This is the case study. But the point of reference that I want us to consider tonight is coming from paragraph, let me take you through this, paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You can travel with me to paragraph 7, which begins with the series of events. The series of events resulted to numerous cases, grievances that culminated to low morale. That is where we are. And here we are told that a report obtained from the Human Resource Department in 2017 indicated that there was a total of 1,000 employees, and they collectively took 1,700 unscheduled days off. And the absenteeism rate, we are told, translated to turnover. And out of the average number of 800 employees, 120 of them, mostly from the middle management level, we are told, resigned from their positions and had to be replaced within the same year. And the high rate of turnover actually alarmed the board of directors, and we are told that they had one of the most competitive reward management systems in the industry. And so the board requested for the remunerations to be extracted. And we have that in the table. We have the remunerations in the table. So I want us again to consider question C, Roman 1-2. Question C, Roman 1-2, that constitutes 10 marks. And I told you the other time that this 10 marks is not something that to be just whisked away. It is something very, very important because it can make you to escape that bracket or the fail bracket. So Roman 1 wants us to calculate the turnover rate. Roman 1 again wants or expects us to calculate absentee rate, absenteeism rate. And then Roman 2, we are expected to calculate mean, mode, and median, respectively. Those are the things that I want us to look at. But before we begin on the computation, our understanding must be drawn to what turnover rate is and what absenteeism rate is. And we have to be able to understand what they are, as well as the formulas which are involved in their computation. Turnover, absenteeism, these are concepts which are not, which are familiar with us. Turnover is a concept that is very familiar with us. Absenteeism as well is another concept which is we are very much familiar with. When you talk about turnover, what comes into our mind? Turnover simply describes the number of separations that an organization experiences within a specific period of time. The number of separations. When you talk about separations, I believe all of us in this meeting have got HR background, unless maybe if we had a participant who is not well versed in HR. But turnover simply relates to the number of employees that get separated with the organization, the number of employees that resign. They have opted to look for greener pastures. They have opted to separate with the organization because of one or two reasons. This is what amounts to turnover. So the rate at which they leave can as well be computed. This rate is very important because it will help us to understand what really ails the company, what really ails the department that is experiencing the higher rate, because we know the higher the rate, the more the input that the human resource needs to put in those specific departments which are affected. There could be poor leadership. there could be a lot of employees not being motivated. So such kind of thing. There are a number of reasons as to why employees get separated with a company. So turnover rate simply will measure the amount or the rate at which employees get separated with the organizations. We want to look at the separations, and separations could be looked at in terms of the number of employees who are resigning. Then the absenteeism. When an employee gets absent, it means he has taken or he has not reported, he has failed to report to work. He is expected or she is expected to report to work, but the idea is he or she has not reported to work. Then that amounts to absenteeism. And absenteeism here, we have to understand the different aspects. There are those that are authorized and there are those which are not authorized. So when we are talking about as absenteeism, we'll have to look at it holistically. We have got different types of absenteeism, those which are authorized as well as those which are not authorized. For example, I may have my leave days, then I decide to take leave without putting formal communication. That amounts to unscheduled day off, and it is treated as well as absenteeism. That is absenteeism. So in this very question, I think that is a concept that has been underlined. That is the unscheduled days off that the employees took. So we need to know the formulas. We need to know the formulas that we need to engage with when calculating these metrics. And on that note, I will share with you the board, the whiteboard where we will be doing our computations. So allow me to share the whiteboard where we will be engaging. And I believe all of us, we can access, can be able to see the board. So we will begin with the first one, that is turnover rate. Just to give you a formula, you can put it down. You need it now and you need it in future. It can help you at your workplace and for exam purposes. So turnover rates will be computed as follows. Turnover rate, let me admit Tom. So turnover rate is given as is given by the formula employees who separate kindly unmute number of employees who separates, and this one will be divided by the average number of employees. That will be divided by the average number of employees. Then everything.
Excuse me, Eric.
Yes.
How come you're dividing by average number of employees and not total number of employees?
That is what the formula dictates. Okay.
And how would you get the average number of employees? Because what are you averaging?
Maybe the question will provide to you.
Oh, the question would actually, yeah, because
the question will provide, but if it is not provided, average number is always obtained by getting the number during the beginning of the period plus the number at the end of the period divided by 2. Okay.
Okay.
But in cases where you have not been, where that is not been provided, you'll be told that the average number of employees were this particular figure.
Very clear. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Welcome. So that is the formula for calculating the turnover rate. Number of employees who separate with the company during that particular period. It could be the month, it could be the year. That divided by the average number of employees times 100. So before we move on to the next HR metric, let's try to sort out this one. And I will take you back to that paragraph which begins with the series of events. On line, from line, well, let's just start from the first line. The series of events resulted to numerous cases, grievances that culminated to low morale. A report obtained from the Human Resource Department in 2017 indicated that there was a total number of 1,000 employees, and they collectively took 1,700 unscheduled days off during the year. Full stop. This is very important, the third line. The absenteeism translated to turnover, and out of this, the average number of employees, out of the average number of employees of 800, out of the average number of 800 employees, 120 of them, mostly from the middle management level, resigned from their positions and had to be replaced within the same year. That statement is very important because it is what gives us all that we need to calculate the turnover rate. Due to that absenteeism, we are told that out of the average number of employees, 800. So of course, you've been given the average number of employees, which is 800. So from this question, your average number of employees is 800. That one has been given. The other thing is 120 of them resigned. So those who resigned simply represents the number that separated with the organization, the number who left, the number who thought that maybe their rights were being infringed, or some things were not being done right. Maybe their morale was affected due to some reasons. So they decided to resign, to separate with the company, to look for other opportunities somewhere, 120 of them. So we have got everything that we need. We have got the number of employees who separated. We have the average number of employees. So we can slot them. We simply slot them in our formula, which states the number of employees who separate divided by the average number of employees times 100. We can easily calculate that. What is the response? What is the answer for those who have attempted it?
15%.
Is it 15?
It's 15.
Yeah.
Let's all confirm that we agree with that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's 15%. And how did we get that? It's 120. 120, of course, divided by the average, which is 800. Average is 800. And then that we multiply by 100. So that should give us 15. And we are all in agreement that we are getting 15% as the answer. So 15% is the answer to that question. So the turnover rate is 15%. That's quite a quite a higher rate. That is why they are saying it translated to a turnover, which really and the high rate of turnover alarmed the board of directors. This rate is so high, and there is no any way it could have passed the eyes of the board of directors. So that is the turnover rate. And I believe all of us, we are capable of computing the turnover rate from today henceforth. Unless there's anyone with the problem on how to compute it, we move on to the absenteeism rate. We move on to absenteeism rate.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
What is the acceptable or acceptable turnover rate in an organization?
It should be a single digit. It should be a single digit, and most probably 4% and below. But single digits is acceptable. But now when it gets to double digits, that is a cause for alarm, that something needs to be done. Because again, people have to separate with the organization. That is a fact we cannot deny. because we could be having separation due to greener pastures, but the rate at which they separate should be evolving around a single digit figure. But the moment it steps into double digit, then that is enough to draw our attention to put some measures or to investigate our departments or the different functions within the organization, find out what we can do to prevent that. Any other question?
Thank you.
No question. So let's proceed to the next, that is the absentee rates. Absentee rates. Absentee rate is another one that is familiar with us, because these are things that, these are experiences. There are situations that surround us in our everyday life along our line of duty. We expect them. In very many occasions, employees fail to report to work. There are instances when these absenteeisms have been authorized. There are instances where they have not been authorized. There are instances where people are sick, but they fail to communicate. And that amounts to absenteeism, because it will overly lower the production. The bottom line of the organization will be affected. But if the employees had communicated, then there would be plans that would be put in place to take into account the absences. But in cases where they fail to communicate, then that translates to unscheduled days off. And exactly that is what we have here. On line 3, I would begin from the second statement of that paragraph. We are told that a report obtained from the Human Resource Department in 2017 indicated that there was a total of 1,000 employees, and they collectively took 1,700 unscheduled days off during that particular year. So that statement alone would be enough for you to compute the absenteeism rate. Don't waste your time trying to consult with the other statements that start with the absenteeism. This one is particularly meant for the turnover. So there are situations where candidates may be confused because of the existence of these very many figures. As to which one to use, you may be wondering which one to use, whether to use the 800, whether to use the 120, but it's important to note that that is not relevant. That will not be relevant for this case. So what is absenteeism rate? How do we calculate it? Absenteeism rate is given by the number of absent days. Number of absent days. Let me just have it down. Number of absent days. This one will be divided. Will be divided by the number of available work days. And then all of this multiply by 100. All of that multiply by 100. So that is the absenteeism rate, or the absentee rate. Number of absent days divided by the number of available work days times 100. That is one formula that we can apply. The other formula that we can as well apply would be this one here. Average number of employees times the missed work days and that is divided by average number of employees multiplied by the total work days. So both these two formulas can do, but will only apply depending on the information that has been given. Not all of them will be used in every occasion. They'll be used particularly depending with the kind or the amount of information, whether the information given is relevant. If not relevant, then you will not use them. You'll only use each one where it is applicable. So the first one which you can employ here is number of absent days divided by the number of available work days times 100. Average number of employees times missed work days over average number of employees times total work days. So from this question, we can use the first one, number of absent days divided by the number of available work days. Remember, the absent days, these are days which have not been authorized. These are days which have not been authorized. The absentee rate that we are particularly concerned about is that which has not been authorized. That which has not been authorized. If an employee has or is sick and has informed you in writing and you have approved of this, then that will not be considered. That should not be calculated. What is calculated is only that which was, unauthorized. So our total number of absent days are the unscheduled days off in the year, 1,700 of them. We had 1,700 unscheduled days off. The other thing that we need to ask ourselves is the number of available work days. Taking into account that this is involving the year 2017. This is involving the year 2017. How do we calculate work days in a year? Calculating work days in a year would be the total number of days that year. You subtract all the weekends, you subtract all the holidays. Then whatever remains should give you the work days. You might be asking yourself, how will you do that? So there are things that you should just know. You should know the number of holidays in a year. Kama hujajua, then it means you have not done enough. As a human resource professional, you should be able to know the total number of.
Mwalimu,
Yes?
this year we had so many holidays.
Yeah, very true. There were some that came as a result of executive orders. You know, those ones are unexpected. So you cannot, you can never expect them. But what, from the knowledge of the number of holidays, the normal holidays we know, this is what you should always work with. The normal holidays in a year. As a human resource professional, you should have that knowledge. Those that normally come with executive orders, you have got no control over them. So we will not take them into account. Normal number of holidays in a year are around 17. Ukiongeza zile zote, the national ones, hizo zingine za Christians, za Muslims, zote ukiweka zote pamoja, they're supposed to be 17. How many Sundays do we have in a year? How many Saturdays do we have in a year? 2017, 53 Saturdays. Averagely, that is what we normally have. Saturdays are around 53. Sundays, Sundays are around 53. Saturdays are around 52. That is the number that you should have for all the years. It normally averages around those figures. Holidays in a year, 17, normal ones. They never change. Sundays, 53. Saturdays, 52. Then total number of days in a year, average is 365. Hiyo a quarter unaachana nayo. 365. So 365 ukitoa hizo zote in 2017 or in any other year, we expect around 243 work days. We expect around 243 work days. Some will ask, how about those who work on half day week, Saturday? Remember, what we normally take into account is the normal work days as of the government in the public sector. That is what is normally taken into account. So we will always go with Monday to Friday. We will always go with Monday to Friday for the purposes of doing these calculations. For the purposes of doing these calculations, it is Monday to Friday. Weekends are 2. We've got Saturday and Sunday. So 243 averagely is the official work days in a year, 243. So in this question, we need to know the average. No, we will not be using the second. We need to know the number of absent days during that particular period, 2017. You have been told it was 1,700 unscheduled days off. Then you also need to know the number of available work days for the 1,000 employees. Each one is subjected to 243 days. Kila mtu akona 243 days, and there are 1,000 people. So it means the total work days for all these 1,000 will be 1,000 times 243. The total work days for the employees will be 1,000 times 243. So that will give us 243,000 work days for all our employees in this company. Then the number of absent days are 1,700. Those are the figures that we substitute. Substitute both in the numerator and in the denominator. And then you multiply that by 100. I believe you'll be able to get a quite negligible value. That is why it did not raise the any cause of alarm. The absenteeism rate never raised the cause of alarm because it was recommended rate. That was okay. But let's calculate it and see or find out what figure it is. Number of absent days, 1,700. The number of available work days, total, number of employees times the 243 days, and then you multiply that by 100. That will give us the absentee rate. What is the figure?
.69,
0.69,
which is equivalent to 1.
or it's around 1. So I believe that all of us are getting that. It's quite a negligible value and has got any problem. So the only thing that would advise our employees in this case, unaweza ulizwa, what would you do in the case of these unscheduled days off? There should be a clear channel of communication. Maybe in your organization, you do not have a clear channel of communication where employees can communicate wherever they have issues. No issues or occasions where employees are sick, those are things you cannot foresee. And again, there are things that you cannot prevent. There are things that we expect. When somebody falls sick, it's okay. But the only thing is, did he communicate? Do you have a channel where they can communicate? You have a sick leave. You have leave days. Did you communicate? Or do people just go for their leave days without communicating? Akona 21 in a year. Ameenda tu for these 21 days, ajasema, those are unscheduled. Anafaa seme. So sometimes the challenges that we have is absence of communication channels where employees can communicate. But the rates, as you can see, is quite a good rate. It's not really an alarming rate. 0 points. You said 0 point what? How? What, 0 points? What is the
0.66.
66?
09.
0.6995. 0.6995.
695, eh? That's around 0.7, eh?
Yeah.
That's around 0.7. So that's not a bad rate. And that is why from the question, from the case study, you could even see the board of directors were not moved by that. They were not moved by the absentee rate. What they were moved with was the rate of turnover, which entered the 2-digit number, 15%. So any question with regards to that? Before we move on to the next bit, I believe all of us, we are comfortable with that. I want us to move to Roman 2, using the data provided in the table. Now in the table, we had salaries. Of all those, of the employees who separated, who resigned, we were forced to extract their pays, the gross pays. And we have got their identification numbers and their salaries against those identification numbers, just 10 of them. And you can clearly see what we have here. So from this, you are expected to calculate the mean, you are expected to calculate mode, you are expected to calculate median. Again, these are some measures that we are familiar with. We are familiar with mean, we are very familiar with mode, we are very familiar with median. At one point, we had been in statistics class, or we had been in a mathematics class, and we all computed mean, we all computed mode and median. This class is just to remind us of what mean is, what mode is, and what median is, and how we can compute them. Mean is simply a measure of central tendency, which simply measures the total number of observations, or we can say that the total amount divided by the number of observations. Just getting the total value of all the observations, total value of all the observations, dividing by the number of observations. If you have got 5 observations, what is the value of these observations? You simply add. They could be marks obtained by candidates in an examination. Maybe there are 5 candidates. First one scored 40, the second 50, the other one 50, the other one 60, the other one 70. All that you need to add is add the total marks, and then you divide by the total number of the students. That is the mean. So it is just as simple as that. Mode. Mode is the number which is occurring many times, the number which is occurring frequently. In some cases, if you miss on the number which is occurring frequently, you simply obtain mode by getting the largest value. From the observations, you simply identify that which is the largest. That will give you the mode. Then we have the median. Median is simply obtained from the word middle. It is derived from the word middle. Middle is simply the observation which is dividing the data into two equal parts. So that observation which divides the data into two equal parts is the median. But we have a problem. Cases where the observation is odd number, the number of observations is odd, it is very simple and easier to calculate median. The challenge we will be having is where the total number of observations is even. For example, you get 6 students, or you have got 8 students, or you have got 10 students, then it will have a problem. You'll have to use a special formula for you to be able to get or arrive at the median. So these are some of the formulas that you can put down for the purposes of calculating mean, for calculating median, because we already know mode as the largest value of all the observations or the number that occur many times. So let me just give you the formula for calculating mean and median, because you also have to quote the formulas. You cannot just begin your computation without putting down the formulas. So the formula for calculating mean is as follows. So mean can be calculated as follows. Mean is simply the total, or let's say sum of all the value of the observations and then that is divided by the number of observations. The number of observations. That is mean. And just to move on very quickly, because we will wrap this formula, we can calculate it. We can calculate it. Let's get back to our problem with the case study. And everything is now on the table. And it is about the salary. It's about the salary. The number of observations are simply the 10 employees, sample of 10 employees. So the total number of observations is 10. We have got 10 employees. And then the gross salary, the total values will be the totals of all these salaries. So meaning you'll have to add 293 to 276 to 280,000, 273, even mpaka 300,000. That will be the total value, the sum of all the values of the observations. So let's add 293, 276, mpaka hiyo 300 to pate the total values. Then we divide that by the number of observations. Let's do that. What are you getting?
278,700.
Two.
78,700.
2,787,000.
Oh, sorry, I gave you the total.
Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay, then you divide that by
10.
10. Divide that by 10. And then you'll get 278,700. So your mean will be 278,700. That is your mean. 278,700. That is mean. And it's just as simple as that. And you get your 2 marks. You won't even take much time computing it. Just that simple. 278,700. And you get your mean. The next one is mod. Mod, we do not have a formula, but we know is the largest value. Largest should be the largest gross salary. Gross salary, of course, you have to indicate that. If it is not the largest, then it is the most frequent. The most frequent gross salary should be the most frequent gross salary. So you simply, you'll be using inspection in this case. Just inspect. Just inspect. From the look of things, I don't have a number that is repeating itself. I do not have that. I have the largest. So I will go with the largest. So mod is 300,000. The mod is 300,000. Just that simple, you get your 2 marks. But you will not get your 2 marks by just writing 300,000. So that is the difference. You will not get your full marks by just writing 300,000. You have to show them, because you do not have a formula for this. You have to tell them that it is the largest gross salary or the most frequent gross salary. And in this case, our largest is 300,000. That is mod. Then the next one is median. Do you have a problem with the first two? Any problem with the first two before we move on to median?
It's very clear.
All right. So let's move on to median. Now, for median, I want us to consider 2 cases. There's a case for odd numbers, and there's a case for even number. So we have to consider when the number of observations is odd, how do we get our median? So when the number of observation is odd, our median will be obtained by using the formula. So that is the formula that we'll be using. That is the formula that we will be using. But first of all, your data must be arranged in either ascending order or descending order. The first thing would be for you to arrange the data in either ascending order or descending order, so that you have a rank. You have the first item, the second item, the third item, the fourth, up to the 10th item. Because what we are interested here is on the nth item. That is what we are concerned about. So for odd, we'll be looking at n plus 1 over 2th item. And that data will only be, that item will only be obtained using the formula, applying the formula on a data which has been arranged in either ascending order or descending order. So in other words, what we are saying is that data must be in either ascending order or descending order. You must first of all arrange your data so data must be in either ascending order or descending order. So our table, you just through inspection identify these items, we want to arrange them. The smallest item here is 262,000, I guess. Then we move on to 271. Then from 271, we go to 272. From 272, we move to 273. From 273, I see we have 274. From 274, we move to 276. From 276, we move to 280. From 280, we move to 286. Then from 286, we move to 293. Then from 293, we move to 300. And I believe I have 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I've got 10. So I've arranged them so that this is the first item, the second item, the third item in that order. So we have the first item up to the 10th item, all of them arranged in ascending order. That is what we must first of all do when computing median. When computing median. And you will realize that the total number of observations here is not odd, it is even. 10 is an even number. So meaning we cannot apply this formula. This formula only applies for odd. When the number of observation is odd, that is when we will use n plus 1 divided by 2 item. That is when we will identify the item number that is given by that particular formula. So we have to use another formula for even when the number of observation is even. So when we have even, we'll be using this formula. We'll be using this formula. We'll be using half. Half. Half into n divided by 2 item plus n plus 2 divided by, clear? So that is the formula that we will use for even numbers. When the number of observation is even, it is a half in bracket n divided by 2, n divided by 2, n divided by 2 item plus n plus 2 over 2th item. Just n divided by 2 item plus n plus 2 divided by 2th item. That is when the number of observation is even. Number of observation is given by letter n. N is the number of observation, which is 10. N is the number of observation, which is 10. N is simply the number of observation, which is 10. So in this case, what we are expected to do, just a minute, is to have our 1 divided by 2. Our 1 divided by 2. Then in brackets, sorry, n divided by 2. N divided by 2 is 10 divided by 2, which is the 5th item. 5th item. N divided by 2 is 10 divided by 2, which is the 5th item. It gives you 5. Then unaongeza na th yenye iko hapo kando yake inakuwa the 5th item. So that 5th item plus the second part is n plus 2 divided by 2. N plus 2 divided by 2. That is 10 plus 2. 10 plus 2 divided by 2. That is 12 divided by 2, which is the 6th item. Which is the 6th item. So it is the 5th item plus the 6th item. You divide by 2. That should give you the median. That should give you the median. The 5th item.
Walimu, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Sorry, I think I'm lost. Where are we getting the 5th and the 6th item? Is it
Let's-
part of the formula?
Let's get back to the formula. The formula is 1 over 2 into n divided by 2th item. Are we there? Plus n plus 2 divided by 2th item. That is our formula. N is the number of observation, which is equal to 10. Because we have got a sample of 10 employees. So N is the number of observations, which is equal to 10. Are we okay up to that point?
Yes.
So we want to substitute the number of observations that we have into the formula. The formula is 1 over 2 into the first part of this formula is where we have n over 2th item. This is the first part. We want to deal with the first part alone. So n is the total number of observations, which is 10. So where there is n, you put 10. So that in the first part, you will have 10 divided by 2. Let me just write it here so that you get to understand what I'm talking about. So we've got a half. Let me have it this side. 1 divide by 2. So we have got 1 divided by 2. The next is brackets. So we are saying that the first part is where we have n divided by 2. That is simply 10 divided by 2. That is simply 10 divided by 2. That is the first part. So the first part we have n divided by 2th item, which can be simplified as 10 divided by 2th item. Then we move on to the second part. The second part is where we have n plus 2 divided by 2. So where there is n here, you put 10. Where there is n, you put 10. So that is 10 plus 2 will give you 12 in the numerator. So in the numerator, you have 12. That 12, divide it by 2. So I divide it by 2. My slash there means divide. So divide it by 2, and that will be the item we are looking for. So it is 12 divided by 2th item. Then you are simplifying them. 10 divided by 2, 10 divided by 2 gives you 5. You write 5, you return TH item. So it becomes 5th item. Plus, the plus is here. Plus, we have written it here. 12 divided by 2. 12 divided by 2 is 6. You write 6, then you bring down TH item so that it becomes 6th item. 6th item. So that gives us a half into bracket 5th item plus 6th item. Are we clear up to that point? Are we together?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, madam.
Yes.
Now, from the data that you have arranged in either ascending order or descending order, you just identify the 5th item. The 5th item here is, this is the first, the second, the third, the fourth, the 5th. The 5th is 274,000. The 5th is 274,000. So I'll have my half first. Let me have my half. Let me have my half first. So my half into the 5th item, which is 274,000, plus the 6th item. The 6th item here is 276,000. 276,000. And then you close that bracket. So that should give you